Here we go. Without any further ado, I want to present Eddie Tabash onto the stage. Let's all give him a round of applause and welcome him to
Thank you very much, Mike. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see all of you. And we are here for a very, very special kind of discussion because we are here to actually put an end to the systemic problem that has been holding us back for millennia. It's very frustrating that there have been so many false starts, so many promising beginnings throughout the eons of human existence that we would finally, if not intellectually, defeat supernatural claims in the minds of the general public, that we would at least mount a credible challenge to it. And yet, all of those false promises turned out to be just that, false promises, and we haven't really gotten off the ground. So today, I am proposing the beginnings of a blueprint. Taking atheism to the general public, the time is now. And as I just said, each generation has false starts. In every generation, there has been a promising beginning of a true vanguard movement that will finally achieve widespread public acceptance for non-belief. Yet in each generation, there's been an ultimately disappointing failure to actually register the naturalistic alternative to supernatural claims in the public consciousness. Atheism, even with its powerful scientific and philosophical arguments, still remains either the most publicly unnoticed viewpoint in the marketplace of ideas, or the most publicly despised among all the competing worldviews pertaining to the nature of reality. Now, realistically, this could take 100 years, and that's all right. Given the confounding extent to which religion is entrenched in our society, it could take 100 years of sustained, intense effort to even begin to cut into the current monolithic stranglehold that religion has on American mass culture. Because we atheists have a double challenge. We not only have to present our arguments against supernatural claims, we have to first persuade society that it's even morally acceptable to make our arguments. Now, too many people in our country take it for granted as a horrible premise that's never examined that religious claims deserve some special insulation from critical examination and doubt. This is a vicious double standard in which folksy common culture approves of deep skepticism directed against all paranormal claims unless those claims are safely housed in the context of religion. Then, the same common culture expects even the most outlandish claims to be met at a minimum with respectful silence and an artificial forfeiture of the critical examination that we would automatically apply to anything else, to all other claims. Outside of social and political pressure, there is no reason that religious dogma deserves a pass in its claims. No reason whatsoever. Outside of social and political pressure, there is no sound intellectual foundation for giving the paranormal and supernatural claims of religion any kind of special exemption from critical examination, doubt, and ridicule. Now, the religious right is still powerful. Given their undiminished power, and given that the outcome of the 2016 elections could still give them an ultimate victory in abolishing separation of church and state because of the balance on the Supreme Court, we atheists can no longer wait to begin our massive education campaign directed at society at large. None of us should underestimate the ferocity of resistance that will confront our efforts. But we can't be deterred from our task by the opposition of even large-scale rabid majorities who may fight us unceasingly. Now, going public with varying degrees of depth of argument. Within our own movement, there has been an interminable debate as to whether members of the general public are even able to comprehend rigorous arguments in favor of the naturalistic worldview, or able but unwilling to exercise the effort necessary to comprehend those arguments. The only way out of this never-ending dispute is for us to take a multi-pronged approach. We must make our strongest arguments, but use common sense and vary their technical depth depending upon the audience. However, the fact that such distinctions are made in light of specific audiences should never lead to a wholesale dumbing down of the level of our arguments in all cases. University debates on God's existence are a wonderful way for the atheistic viewpoint to be brought to a most important segment of the population, students. Now, the preparation and the work necessary to become a competent debater is not for everyone. However, those of us who can do this successfully should try to participate in these events as often as possible. Atheists need to call into talk radio more often. We need to write more op-ed pieces and more letters to the editor. Particularly throughout this nation, when we have some of our people in smaller or more insular communities where religious fundamentalism tends to fester with a greater degree of uniformity. Because a shift of one vote on the United States Supreme Court could shunt us into theocracy, because we have only 4.6 justices that say that government must be neutral between religion and non-religion, and 4.4 justices that allow government to favor religion over non-belief. Church-state separation in our political lives, if we are to survive and be practical and learn to play the real-world game of politics and societal progress, church-state separation must trump all other issues in the political realm. We must also make sure then that we only vote for political candidates at all levels of government who are committed to preserving the separation of religion and government, which is defined as government neutrality in matters of religion, which means that believers and non-believers must be equal before the law. Only a candidate, whether such an individual is personally a believer or non-believer, who is committed to the full equality of atheists, should receive our votes. Our situation is so desperate that this should be the case even if such a candidate may not be in accord with all of our views on other unrelated political issues. Now, all of us have issues unrelated to secularism and church-state separation that are important to us. But if we continue to demand that the politicians we support agree with us on everything, we'll never be able to elect secular people or even our own brother and sister atheists to office. We have to become practical and learn how to play the political game. And we have to take a page out of the political playbook of the gay community, who are most similar to us in that over the past 30 years, they've overcome religious-based prejudice in order to achieve real power in society. They first began by supporting pro-gay candidates who weren't gay, and then they began to elect their own to office, and before that, their own already in office began coming out of the closet. We must learn from them. And also, because throughout history, we non-believers have always been there for gay and lesbian people, we shouldn't be shy about asking our gay friends as they rise up the political ladder to reach down and help us climb up too. Because we've always been there for them. You have never ever seen in any of the court cases on same-sex marriage a brief from atheists for traditional marriage. You've never seen that. And so we must learn from those who are similarly situated to us and have learned to achieve true political power. Because our situation is so desperate that if branches of government would ever be permitted to favor religion collectively against non-belief, our cause is lost. In 2005, Justice Scalia wrote that the First Amendment does not protect the devout atheist. He needs only one more vote on the court for that to be a majority view. Now, we'll also have to raise more money to be competitive. We must make sure that we have numbers of legal teams in place to bring lawsuits when any branch of government violates the neutrality principle. We must also start giving to atheist and to church-state separation organizations on a level that as much as possible begins to parallel the money provided to religious institutions. Now, we will never be able to produce as much money for our outreach and self-protection as the religious, but we have to do the best we can. Because remember this, going out of the realm of the theoretical and getting into the mud and getting our hands dirty in real-world street-fighting political activism to make real progress in society. We have to play the game as it really is, not as we want it to be. Therefore, we cannot avoid the reality that here in the United States, we live by the golden rule. That is the ones with the gold rule. And we can't be expected to successfully compete against religious ideas if there is such a colossal gap between our collective financial resources and those of religious proselytizers. Now, internally, because burnout can be a real problem when you are part of still the most unjustly despised minority in America today, each of us will have to find a suitable level of involvement. Some of us will be able to do public debates against religious philosophers. Some will be able to give more money than others. Some of us will be able to devote more time than others. But we must never, since we are such a small community, since those of us active at all in atheist movements, in terms of the totality of the picture of American society, all of us, with all of our multiple organizations, are still all huddled together in a modest little lifeboat on a very stormy ocean. So we must never browbeat each other because some of us will be able to do more than others. We must each find a way to contribute to the joint effort of taking atheism to the general public that is still consistent with living the life we want to live. Some of us will make this the overarching commitment of our lives. And there are others whose total devotion to this effort will not reach such a level. Everybody here has a unique talent to contribute, whatever that is. And we must make our brother and sister atheists feel as comfortable as possible because we are the last movement in the world that can afford to alienate people and lose people. This is also why when a brother or sister atheist seeks political office, we can't say, well, I agree with you on 200 of your issues, but because I disagree with you on 25, I'm going to support the non-atheist. We have to learn from the gays, from the African Americans, from women, from Latinos, all of whom have put their interests first. We have just as much of a moral right to put the interests of our own first as does any other historically persecuted minority. Think of it this way. Prejudice against a human being for nothing more than disbelieving in the supernatural is as pernicious as racial bigotry. It is just as bad. For someone to say you should not have equal rights because you don't believe in a fantasy creature is no less of a horror than to say you should not have equal rights because of the color of your skin. And so if racial minorities were morally justified in putting their own interests first, so are we atheists. We will have to endure society's severe backlash. We must find the strength to withstand the hostility that we will face and the seething ignorance that gives rise to that hostility. In this regard, we must be a source of comfort and nurturing for each other. Now, everyone in this room who's ventured forth in public on behalf of atheism has a story to tell of some person or of many people who meet reasoned argument with the most incredibly idiotic responses. Further, while ours is a philosophical, scientific, and intellectual movement, we must make clear that we will not tolerate any violence against us. Very important. Our inherent right of self-defense as human beings is in no way diminished because we don't believe in any supernatural beings. We have just as much right to defend ourselves if physically attacked as does any other human being or group of people. Now, we must frankly and forthrightly within our ranks or among the people we know confront the syndrome of the self-hating atheist. There are a number of our brother and sister non-believers who have psychologically bought into the notion that the claims of religion do deserve some special exemption from criticism and ridicule, which are not available to other supernatural or paranormal beliefs. Though these people are atheists themselves, they've been browbeaten by society's prevailing majority views on religion to the point where they have either consciously or subconsciously bought into the dominant mythology that there should still be a level of deference due to religious beliefs not equally conferred on any other belief system or ideology. Then there are atheists who really don't want to see us have to muffle the full force and effect of our arguments, but believe that for strategic purposes, religion is so powerful in our society that tactically we must soft pedal our views in order for those views to have a chance to survive. The proper response to these calls for severe restraint on our part is that religious dogma will not die out on its own.
That's right.
No movement that has ever challenged the prevailing views in society succeeded by watering down its arguments to the point where those arguments lack the impact to unsettle those comfortable with that society's controlling beliefs. If we don't powerfully argue our cause, we won't make a dent in the monopoly religious beliefs currently have on the public mind. There's no question about this. We must also never permit the fox to guard the henhouse. We cannot succumb to the admonitions of religionists that we be less angry or less aggressive in making our arguments. They don't tone down their assertions that they have cornered the market on comprehending the will of the most powerful being in existence, and that further, this being will eternally punish those who don't believe like they do. Accordingly, we don't have to tone down our assertion that no such being exists and that therefore no one will ever be eternally rewarded or punished in the first place. No religious person who wants to see theistic arguments prevail over atheistic ones has our best interests in mind when they recommend that we reduce the intensity and thoroughness of our public arguments. We must never let our opponents establish the parameters of what is socially acceptable for atheists to say in public. And when popular commentators criticize us for being angry atheists, we must boldly strike back by accusing them of being angry religionists who cannot enjoy their own lives knowing that there are those of us who choose to live freely, unfettered by ancient superstitions. Now, we must call religious activists on the claim that our agenda would jeopardize their freedoms. Many on the religious right have the audacity to say that if they cannot impose their religion on all of society through government action, they're the ones facing discrimination. This is preposterous. We atheists are the ones who want to preserve equality before the law of believer and non-believer alike. We just don't want government to be able to favor God beliefs more than our views. We want government to be neutral in matters of religion so that everyone is an equal citizen regardless of their views and how the universe is put together. As I wrote to the United States Supreme Court in my amicus brief in the Pledge of Allegiance case, we secularists would also oppose inserting in the pledge the words, "One nation under no God." What we want is for the pledge to be entirely neutral and not mention God one way or another so that all of us, whether believer or non-believer, have an equal stake in it. Thus, as long as we exercise the same rights that the religious have to publicly express our views about whether or not a supreme being exists, simultaneously with supporting equality before the law for all points of view on matters of religion, we are not a threat to the legal rights of religious believers. The religious cannot properly claim to be threatened by our arguments. If they are offended by what we say, that's the price everyone pays for free speech. There is no such thing as politically correct religion.
Very true.
And we must stand up to anybody and everybody to make sure that no religious belief system can claim special rights to avoid offense. Therefore, we must be forthright in defending the right of anyone to ridicule any religion under the First Amendment. And we must doubly, because of societal pressure in many parts of the world, make sure that no Muslims have the opportunity to censor things they don't want to hear. And we must even confront very progressive countries like Holland and like Canada and tell them that their hate speech laws are antithetical to free expression and that members of all religious groups have to pay the price of being offended and that they can speak freely in response. If free expression and the separation of church and state are properly legally functioning, the religious should have no greater rights to silence their critics than do the adherents of any other belief system. Now, hearkening back to avoiding the syndrome of the self-hating atheist and not allowing the fox to guard the hen house, we must not fall into the trap of fearing that we may come off as anti-religious. As long as we would not restrict the legal equality of believers, criticizing their beliefs is fair game in a free society. Ratzinger, the ex-pope, were not preoccupied with protecting child-raping priests, perpetuating bigotry against gays and lesbians, and sabotaging family planning in an already overpopulated world. Was openly critical of the effect that atheism is having on Europe. He didn't restrain his comments out of fear of coming across as anti-atheism. If religious leaders don't hold back on their criticism of secularism and non-belief, why should we have to hold back in our criticism of religion?
Right.
This brings me back to the point I made earlier about supporting the candidates for office who are the most committed to the separation of church and state, whether they are believers or non-believers. Since we are not a threat to the equality of believers before the law, we must pursue a twin-track strategy. Well, on the one hand, we argue to society at large why no supernatural beings exist. At the same time, we can work with liberal and open-minded religionists to preserve the separation of church and state for all of us, so that no one's scope of legal freedoms depends on either accepting or rejecting any tenet of theological belief. There is no contradiction between attempting to voluntarily persuade people through force of argument why God does not exist, and simultaneously working with everyone who will work with us to ensure full civil rights for believer and non-believer alike. We must reach out to women in the fight against religious dogma. We have to commence a massive public outreach to women. All of the religions that wield substantial power in this country and in this world are literally man-made belief systems.
That's right.
All of these traditional religions are based upon scriptures that unambiguously order women to be subordinate to men.
That's right.
Women should be the most eager to cast off millennia of religiously mandated oppression. Women on a mass scale must be made aware of the literal worlds of the Bible and the Quran. There can be no true equality for women as long as the majority of any society deems our moral values to be undergirded by an ultimate force that has issued revelations requiring male hegemony. Similarly, as the gay community rises in political power, we must, and I say this again, reach out to them and ask their help to be there for us as we have been there for them. Now, sometimes we may have to reach only one person at a time. Somewhat akin to the Allied invasion of Normandy against the Nazis in World War II. There will be times that we will have to take territory 1 inch at a time. This means spending time explaining atheism to our friend or our neighbor who is unaware of who we are and why don't we believe in the supernatural. Assisting masses of people in the process of crawling out of the swamp of superstition into enlightenment is a colossal undertaking. It must be done with a small number or with a large number of people. If one person is open to hearing about atheism, that one person deserves our time. If 100 people want to hear about atheism, so much the better. However, we must still be prepared to proceed one person at a time during those times when no other opportunities present themselves. We must also have plans to obtain greater publicity. We and our organizations must have formalized procedures for obtaining more speaking engagements that will begin to reach ever larger numbers of people. Any forum that reaches the public, radio, television, newspapers, the internet, personal appearances enhances our effort. Every published op-ed piece, every published letter to the editor can be an additional door opener. We also have to strategize with each other more frequently in a more congenial manner. We must also gather with each other and strategize about how best to proceed. Many of us will have different approaches, but we can pool our ideas, unlike never before, to come up with some kind of consensus as to how to really break through into the public consciousness. Now, we must keep up with all the new arguments. Those of us who are or will become active in public speaking and debating must always be up for the task of studying the latest developments in the philosophy of religion. Many people don't know this, but there's a whole new crop of PhD Christian philosophers who are churning out new technical defenses of the claim that the biblical God actually exists. And they take these to thousands and thousands of college students every year in this country. Now, it's a mistake to think tactically that we can just dismiss their arguments without engaging them in depth. We ignore arguments of these religious philosophers at our peril. Their claims must be met and overcome. Their arguments can be defeated. But to do so takes ongoing study of philosophy and science. And this is not for everybody, but for those of us who will be doing actual public speaking and debating for atheism, this is important. And we have some impressive resources. We have various magazines. There's Prometheus Books. Also, the website of Internet Infidels, infidels.org, has the finest collection of technical arguments for the atheistic viewpoint. Now, very, very important. We must also show sympathy for people we reach. This is the human in humanism. There will be times, and I've experienced this already, when we succeed in persuading people that there is no deity, and some or many of these individuals will actually mourn the loss of what was for them a once very comforting belief system. We must never fail to show sympathy for those former believers who are courageous enough to abandon their religious beliefs as dictated by argument and evidence. We should comfort them and assure them that it's all right to even shed a tear over the loss of hope in a saving power that they now realize never existed in the first place. This is the world's most important philosophical revolution. As we continue to work our way through the multifaceted task of accelerating the pace with which atheism is presented to the general public, we must sustain our inspiration and enthusiasm through even the most disappointing times. In 1966, 2 years before his own assassination, Senator Robert Kennedy said, "Few are willing to brave the disapproval of others, the censure of their colleagues, the wrath of society. Moral courage is a rarer commodity than even bravery in battle or great intelligence. Yet it is the one essential, vital quality for those who seek to change this world which yields most painfully to change." And then, before his untimely death at the age of 42, Senator Kennedy also said, "The future may lie beyond our vision, but it is not beyond our control. It is the shaping impulse of America that neither fate nor nature nor the irresistible tides of history, but the work of our hands, matched to reason and principle, will determine our own destiny." We must never forget, as atheists, that there is no more noble effort to be undertaken than explaining to society at large why no supernatural being or beings exist. Look at it this way. As daunting as the task is, as much current hostility as we face from society at large, if we succeed, we atheists will have dispelled the greatest fraud to ever permeate the world, and we will have replaced it with the light of truth. Thank you. we have time for questions, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yes, I want to educate the public here that for years I've been coming to these meetings and then I have to take a leave of absence for personal reasons and I'm back now. I have been a sole soldier at Pacifica KPFK, our only non-commercial radio station here in KPFK in LA, which has 5 stations nationwide. And I have repeatedly appealed to the groups here to join me when the local boards need to bring atheist programming to KPFK. But because I am always alone and maybe one person may say, I agree with Bella, it's not sufficient. I am in public all the time speaking out. I am not a shy person, you can see. Very few of us can do that, as you said. But you can join me and I can give you the work about how we can force and push KPFK to give us an hour free of atheist programming at KPFK. That would be very significant. And I thank you so much.
What we contact? How do we contact you?
After the meeting, we'll have a lunch area.
I'm
Please.
going to be here and you can talk to me about it. I'm
You're hanging out after the meeting, so
and I
please.
am a former board member here.
Great. Thank you very much for the talk. We're going to do questions and answers right now. I just want to ask you, in the interest of keeping the questions and giving everybody an opportunity to make a question, I'd ask that if we can please just form a line on the side there. So I will be walking around with this. I'll have this microphone there. So if you would like to ask a question, please come on over here and we'll ask the questions this way, so this way we can all be on the microphone. It'll be easier to pass it along, and ask that the questions be direct and be on topic, and keep the questions short and direct. Okay, so our first question here.
Great speech. That was great. My opinion that when we can do a lot of the things that the religious people do, we can satisfy the existential needs, create a community, give people some kind of a humanist code, moral code, and satisfy all those needs. My question is, I read in the Free and Syria a few months ago that the numbers are coming up. And can we take any comfort in the fact that the numbers are coming up towards 30% or something? Maybe they were talking about the millennial generation, and the fact that we're getting more young people meeting up and doing things on the internet. Can we take any comfort in that?
Not yet. Here's why. Though the numbers are coming up, if the president elected in 16 gives the religious right one more vote on the Supreme Court, and for the first time ever, all branches of government are freed to favor belief over non-belief, there will be such an avalanche of pro-religion promoting legislation in every state legislature in the country and from Congress that we'll be buried. So we can take comfort as long as we make sure that the current landscape of legal equality is not eroded. Because the one way that the religionists can shut down our currently rising status is if we lose our legal equality, or if government is unshackled for the first time ever to openly favor belief over non-belief. So the only way we can take comfort is if we preserve government neutrality in matters of religion and keep the legal playing field equal, so that we can begin to rise in the marketplace of ideas with, quite frankly, the superiority of our ideas.
Thank you, Eddie, very much for your extraordinarily powerful talk. I appreciate it so much. I did not know that there was a bunch, a few, and how many of these PhD religionists who are teaching people how to debate. And you said you mentioned a website that gives a lot of information.
Yes.
Counter this. I'm sure a lot of it, or at least some of us, I'm sure, would like to hear that website.
That's infidels.org. Internet infidels. They have the most technical arguments. Now, when I talk about the debates on college campuses, there is a veritable terror on the other side who undoubtedly wins most of his debates against our people. I'm gratified because he will not debate me again after our 1999 debate. But William Lane Craig is a double PhD Christian philosopher who goes all over the nation and all over the world speaking and debating for the fundamentalist Christian view. Now, many of our people are very frustrated with him, but the frustration itself doesn't help. You have to study his arguments, and you have to be ready to respond. You have to have a machine gun-like approach and not waste a single word. His arguments can be defeated, but you have to be able to do it verbally on stage, and that takes a lot of work. Now, if you consider the number of college students that William Lane Craig reaches as compared to the number of college students that any of our people will reach, even some of the greats in our community who speak and debate very frequently, like Dan Barker, still, they probably reach more than we do. And I'm just saying, now this is a specialized area, but for those of you who want to do what I do, and that is to technically debate the atheist viewpoint versus the theistic viewpoint against opponents who have either PhDs in physics or philosophy, you have an awesome amount of preparation work to do. This is not for everybody, but I can tell you that every time I have debated on a college or university campus, we have made gains. But the amount of preparation is the intellectual equivalent of prepping for a championship fight.
Wow.
But for those of you who want to look at the best collection of our arguments from our scientists and philosophers, infidels.org.
I'm just going to let Richard jump in line here because he's going to go grab our food soon.
Okay.
So he's going to go jump in line and then go get our food.
Eddie, have you heard of or are you familiar with the National Atheist Party? And if so, can you expound on it a little bit?
Well, I've heard of them. A National Atheist Party, again, remember, with my decades of political activism and having been a runner-up twice in primaries for the state assembly, where the primary would have been the whole election, so basically a runner-up 2 times for the state legislature. Consider the marvels of California. I can't get into the lower house of the California legislature, but Arnold could be governor for 7 years. It's a most remarkable situation. It seems even my 50 years of weightlifting were not as good as I thought they were. But on this whole question of political parties, my recommendation in terms of practical advice is not to form another party, but to start electing our own in both major parties if we can. For instance...
But I am a socialist.
Okay.
I don't vote for those 2 parties.
Okay, well, again, you see, my recommendation is, and everybody has to make this decision for themselves, see to what extent you can give other people a pass on various issues to start getting atheists into office. Let me give you an example. The gay community, facing awesome religious-based prejudice, did not start an atheist party. They realized that within one party, the Democratic Party, they could make substantial gains. And the log cabin Republicans did an enormous amount of work, gay Republicans, in substantially, more than most people would have thought 15 years ago, in eroding at least a measurable amount of the anti-gay prejudice in what is essentially today America's religious party. So again, and all of you have to decide this for yourself, but my recommendation as a pragmatic political activist is, if we want to be effective, stay within the two-party system and choose that party which obviously we would have the best chance of rising in. Again, let us not be hesitant to use the gay community as a model for how, when you are a despised minority victimized by religious-based prejudice, you begin to rise through the political process. What they have done is a gold mine of a user guide for us in terms of our own political rising.
I just want to add a little bit to that. In regards to the gay community, we can follow in their footsteps politically, but also in coming out. Oftentimes what we see in the gay community is maybe 40 years ago or 30 years ago, we would see only caricatures of what the gay community was. We would see the YMCA. Many people would think that that is what a gay person was, dressing up as a policeman or a firefighter, or somebody would think that a cross-dresser was a gay person. A lot of misconceptions about the gay community. It wasn't until more people came out as being gay that you got to see that it was your neighbor, your brother, your sister, your co-worker was a gay person who's normal just like you, or just it wasn't the caricature that we would see in the media that gets played up all the time. Same thing with atheism.
Yeah, well, Michael just triggered one of the most important things that I forgot to say, and that's this. In my analogizing to the gay community, if you are a young gay person just beginning college, 17, 18 years old, and you come out of the closet as gay, and your family rejects you and disowns you, there is a vast network of support systems in the organized gay community to comfort and take care of young people who are cut off by their family for coming out as gay. We need desperately to have the same support system for young people who come out as atheists and are disowned by their family. That's absolutely crucial. Here we must mimic to the last letter what the gay community has done in providing support systems. Many times now, when I speak and debate on college campuses, a totally shell-shocked young person will come up to me, grab me, ask for help, saying, I came out to my parents as a non-believer 2 months ago, and they won't talk to me anymore. I'm lost. I'd like to be able to say, call this 800 number 24 hours a day, and there will be help. That's absolutely crucial.
Okay, let me speak, please, before you pass the mic.
Yeah, go ahead.
There is such a group. It's called 1-800-RUNAWAY. It is a secular group. If you know someone who's turned out, disowned, kicked out of their home, whatever, you can give them a call. They work with law enforcement. They work with attorneys. They work with housing and food for not only those under 18, but also young adults. But they are specifically secular. 1-800-RUNAWAY. There have been a huge number of people, just like Eddie is talking about, who have come across Reddit saying that they have been kicked out and disowned. Their family, their extended family, just will not talk to them anymore. Everything was going fine. They said, I'm an atheist. Boom, out the door, like the next day. David Niosia, the humanist, is also working on it. So it's a rising thing. American Atheists is also interested in it, and they're looking into it, trying to get numbers on just how many are being kicked out. So we don't know yet.
That's wonderful to hear. I have a most amazing story. I just came back from Grand Rapids, Minnesota, where I did a speech on God's existence and non-existence. And there were some religious people there. First I told them, shivering from the snow, I said, let me give you some practical advice. The next 2,000 years, when you try to scare people to believe like you do, say hell is cold. But the other thing is, a young atheist student pulled me aside, very, very distraught. And I didn't, if I had that number, I'd have given him to him. And he told me that his parents were arch fundamentalists, and he came out to them as an atheist. And after screaming at him and cursing him, his dad said to him, "I'd rather you told me you were gay." This actually happened. Just to show you how despised we are or can be. Thanks for giving that number. We need to really, all of us need to get behind that. That's both good news and it's urgent news. Thank you for that.
And to expound on that even further, Recovering from Religion is also trying to raise money to set up a hotline as well. And this is another secular hotline and another resource. So if you're interested in supporting something like this, you can support Recovering from Religion, give them donations so that they can fund a hotline directed at secular children who are leaving religion.
Is that a website or what?
Recovering from Religion. I think it's .org. Recoveringfromreligion.org. And of course, anything you could Google. If we don't have the exact web address, everybody's got a website. Just put it into Google and you'll find something. The other number was 1-800-RUNAWAY. If you didn't hear about that, if you didn't hear off mic. And Norman, did you want to say something about Recovering from Religion?
I was going to mention, don't forget about Recovering from
Recovering from Religion. Okay,
but
great.
Don't forget that Recovering from Religion probably doesn't have the resources that 1-800-RUNAWAY does.
Not until they get the donations from us to help them get those resources. So 1-800-RUNAWAY is great, and Recovering from Religion will be an excellent addition, another resource, because runaways, they need all the resources that they can get. They are abandoned by the people who are closest to them. They need several resources. They need our help. Let me pass the mic on. Someone patiently waiting.
Eddie, I'm looking at a shot of a billboard I just took the other day on Glendale Boulevard. It says, "After you die, you will meet God. 855 for truth." And it's very cleverly designed. It has a flat line after a heartbeat. I'm wondering if you have any research on the efficacy of billboards for the atheists' cause.
I don't know how effective they are, but in terms of statistics, but they seem to be working. Again, whenever our people do something, the more the religious cry foul, again, not letting the fox guard the hen house, the more I believe something is effective. Thus far, a lot of our major organizations have done billboards, and they seem to be working. They seem to be working in this sense. One of the things that many of us have always feared, and it's understandable, but there's no way to break through our barriers unless we meet this challenge head on, is the backlash that I talked about today. When we try to do nothing more than assert our equal participation in the marketplace of ideas, this is when there is blowback. And billboards are just that. So I would say that, remember what I said, that we have a two-pronged task, getting our arguments to the people, but first getting to the people of this country the idea that it's even morally acceptable or should even be legally permissible for us to be able to criticize religion with the same freedom as they can criticize us. And in acclimatizing the public, getting the public used to seeing cherished religious beliefs attacked and challenged, I think those billboards serve a very good purpose.
And briefly, Eddie, two other ideas. One is a video that I saw about a month ago, and I don't have the name of the person who has made it, please see me if you're here. I'd like to get that out as widely circulated as possible. It's the most effective instrument of efficacy for the atheist cause I've ever seen in my lifetime. And also, I'd like Atheists United to meet bi-monthly if that's possible. Thank you.
What is the name of the video?
Is it the slideshow? Is it the slideshow?
No, it's a video with slides, yes.
Well, that may be the one I put together.
See Russell afterwards. He'll help you with that.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me get the next question.
Okay, yes, thanks, Eddie. That was really powerful. In recent years, and really all throughout time, we've seen these various end-time predictions. Harold camping up in Oakland, and the Mayans have just been one recent example, or two recent examples of this. Do you see any opening for us when these predictions always fail, as they will invariably? Do you see any opening for us to make our arguments?
Well, that's a wonderful question, and I do. What happens is that usually when the predictions fail, the people who jump on that are allied scientific skeptics. But we have to point out, we atheists have to point out, that the failure of these predictions are no different than the failure of biblical prophecy. And you're right, we need to draw that connection. You see, our ultimate task is to get as many people in the larger society as possible to recognize that there is no real difference between any paranormal claim, and that the fact that a supernatural assertion comes to us in the costume of religion doesn't intellectually, outside of political pressure, justify more credibility than any other paranormal claim. And so to say the world will end in December of 2012 was no different than to say a dead man resurrected, or there were talking snakes, or the sun stood still. That the absence of miraculous events and the failure of predictive prophecy is seamless. It applies to everything. And so if some psychic here in Hollywood predicts that we will have an earthquake and sink into the sea on the 4th of July of this year, and it doesn't happen, we have to point out that that's no different than biblical prophecy. Now, I'm also wondering how many more millennia it will take before people realize Jesus isn't coming back. I'm really curious. I have a feeling that even by the end of this century, enough time won't have passed. It could take another 1,000 years for people to say, wait a minute, he really is tardy here. But you see, I mean, will there come a point where society will say, we've waited too long. He either missed the bus or he's not going to get on any bus and come to us. But you see, here again, let's be clear on this important point. Religion will not die out on its own. We can't just sit back and bask in the glory of some automatic development of human thinking capacity that, without our help, will automatically liberate people from supernatural beliefs. That's not going to happen. It isn't happening. Anything that takes place in society to erode the stranglehold of religion will be hard won by our efforts. They won't automatically happen.
We have about 10 minutes more for questions, so I think we're going to be able to answer all the questions here. Just want to give everybody an idea about 10 minutes more.
Hi, I'm very glad to hear you say about the issue of the PhD Christians and and how they really do pose a serious threat to intelligent people in a lot of cases, the college students that hear them. And I feel that it's something that we have to do to work on ontology, to come up with good explanations so we can counter William Lane Craig types, and say that there is a reason for the universe, but it's not that. And a lot of the time, I kind of feel like I got a little bit of a cold shoulder from the atheist community because they sort of feel that it's not their domain, that issues of why there's a universe don't have any relevance to atheism. And I was wondering if you have any advice on how to maybe show them that it is worthwhile to understand these types of things.
Well, one of the things is that we are already, though we are small in numbers, like a large department store. And there are many of us who aren't aware of this, and there are many who are. For instance, what we need to do, and what your question very appropriately points out, is the way different segments of the community must talk to each other. So that in the atheist department store, we need more communication between furniture and kitchen appliances. And we need more communication between the atheist street activists and the philosophers who write for infidels.org. But remember what I said, we will all bring different talents to bear. So what we need is for every atheist to recognize the importance of countering these arguments, particularly in university debates, but not everyone will participate in them. See, there are many things to choose from, and we all have a right to specialize. Some of us will be able to deal with these things. But what we need from our brother and sister atheists is just a recognition that it's all important. So yes, I mean, the person who does street outreach, the person who pickets, the person who helps put up the billboard may not want to bother with the latest refutation to the fine-tuning argument. And that's fine as long as they recognize that those who do that have an equally valuable role.
I am that person that doesn't want to bother with the sophisticated arguments. Exactly. But I take the bus and I get off at Vernon in Vermont, and I hear this street preacher bellowing, and I want something written up so that I can say just a few words, in response. I feel like I'm doomed. I can't do anything, and I see the religionists going house to house, and we're not allowed to. I've seen it looked down on in here to go house to house. Heaven forbid, actually talk to them. I just want to say one argument before I'm done. My father, who was a very strong atheist, he said, "Do not say atheism in front of black people. Do not talk about it." And he said, they have to have something to hope for. Their lives are worse than ours. When I say this in front of black people, we got lots of atheists. Martin started being atheists.
Okay, you raise a very important point. As some of you will know, I have been one of those who has criticized many organizations and many leaders of supposed organizations that have tried to retrench from the word atheist. And again, let's take a page out of the gay playbook. 40 years ago, society managed to demonize the word queer. The gay community cleverly co-opted it, and you had on college campuses all over the country signs and billboards for queer and we're here, and they re-empowered the word. If we give up on the word atheist, we will have committed the ultimate mistake of letting the fox guard the henhouse. To give up on the word atheist is to show that we are forfeiting to the dominant religious culture their right to pick our vocabulary for us. And that's something that we can never ever do. And so, in fact, some of you know that I was a key player in the forcible retirement of the grand founding father, Paul Kurtz, the great secular humanist philosopher, and one of my main motivations was his loss of courage to defend atheism. And I felt, and though he asked me once why I was doing what I was doing, and I said, Paul, you're like a dad to me, you won't understand this, but given the fearful retrenchment from atheism that you're embarking on, I am saving your legacy from you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to quickly